From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, welcome to Space Brain, the show where we joy watch sci-fi movies and talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya. Tonight we're talking about The Wandering Earth, 2019, and it's directed by, I believe, Frank Guo. And it's a movie which is about that the sun is dying and everyone on Earth has to come together and unite to overcome this problem. And they decide radically to make Earth into a spaceship, basically, don't they, Surrey?
It's you call it an arc ship in science fiction terminology.
Sounds good.
Or a generation ship.
So they want to shift Earth literally out of our solar system and into a new solar system, which is going to take, I think, 1,500 years or 2,500 years to get to the destination.
2,500.
So it's a big plan. It's a long-term plan. And however, on this journey, they reach Jupiter's orbit, which sucks Earth towards it, causing some really dangerous elements. So that's the setup.
Causes some primary conflict.
That's right. And it's available right now on Netflix. So turn back now if you have not seen the movie and go watch it and then tune back in.
Tune back in.
So what was your number one takeaway, Surrey, from The Wandering Earth?
My number one takeaway is... I always get stuck on it because I think through all the possibilities.
No, come on, just one.
Okay, number one takeaway from this is that even in Chinese movies, Russians drink a lot of vodka.
They do.
They're known for it.
And it was a great plot point as well, wasn't it? It was a little, what do they call that? The red herring, I think, don't they?
Oh, no, that's like Chekhov's gun. So if you show it in the first act, it has to be used by the third
later
act,
on.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of them in this movie, and I was like, take note of that.
Yeah, they've got a MacGuffin as well.
Yes.
Their reactor core, lighter core, whatever it is.
Yep.
But it's just the thing they have to, their quest object that they have to take. It doesn't really do anything on its own, but
No.
It was required that they take it there, part of their trials of, strength and endurance.
Definitely, yeah. I was wondering about that big boulder thing. But yeah, definitely.
So, Mark, how about you? Would you classify this as a movie of hope, an experiment, or a warning?
I reckon hope, and they literally spell it out to us in this movie, that hope, at the start she has no hope, and at the end she has hope.
It's like a diamond or something.
Yeah.
It's just saying.
Yeah.
It's a very moving speech.
It was a moving speech, but there is the question of hope a couple of times throughout the film. So I think there's a strong theme of hope in this movie, but I think it is hope because the idea is at the start it's very kind of a negative world, like in that opening montage wherein the Earth is in a lot of trouble, and I kind of automatically started thinking, global warming and stuff like that. But no, it's that the sun is rapidly expanding and it's going to swallow us up in a couple of 100 years. And even there, like he says, Earth had to get together. I think in a very Chinese cultural way, this movie does portray Earth coming together in a bit of a Chinese way. It's so efficient.
Yeah.
I did wonder then and there whether other countries like Australia would really jump on that as quickly or efficiently as the Chinese, they are so efficient, aren't they, at these sorts of...
Considering that we are facing a climate crisis.
Not doing anything.
And you still get these turkeys who...
Well, all of us.
Wish-wash backs and forwards. But what's the cost of that going to be?
Yeah.
Well, how about avoiding annihilation? That sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Well, just on that, for example, China signed up to the Paris Agreement. And yeah, they are a big polluter because they are a big population. But they signed up with those Paris climate talks that happened a few years ago. Australia got an expansion of their pollution level. That was our contribution to that. China agreed on a decrease. They actually met their target 18 months before their original target. So that's what I meant by this efficiency in this movie with what was the idea of saving Earth. Like, it felt very, like, this solution is very Chinese, I reckon. And there's nothing wrong with that. They were very efficient about it. But it did make me wonder, I don't know if Australia would come on board that quickly, or America.
Try and convince America or the UK and all these things.
Anyway, so what I was just saying, sorry, I've gone off tangent a little bit. But at the beginning, it feels a bit dark and bleak, the father and the son, and we have to do this. But even that, in an isolated plot point, Earth came together and there's a bit of hope. But really, there's a long journey to kind of try to get to somewhere good. And the film does that. I think there's lots of tribulations in this film for all of the characters. But at the end of the day, hope does kind of work out. So that's where I sat on it.
Hope.
How about you?
Absolutely, it's a hope. There's no warning in this because there's a little bit of conflict from an artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
But nothing that was really, it was just an irritation more than it wasn't really a major plot.
Yeah,
sort of blocker or challenge.
It was a little homage to 2001.
Yeah, the look of it with the red sort of glow and that boxy look.
They call it Boss, which I thought was good. Boss.
Boss. Oh, it was Moss in the dubbed one. The subtitled one.
Oh, it felt like they kept saying Boss on the dubbed version.
Maybe they did.
We'll talk about that in our viewing experience. So yeah, that's what we think about it. What have you been up to yourself in the creative field?
Creative fields. Oh, I'm still editing my books. I did an interview on another podcast, which will be joining the Gravity Undone site, in fact. So that's nice. There's a very pleasant fellow called Vincent King. He's an author and devil may care flying fool from the States. Yeah. And Alabama. Oh, gosh, I hope that's right. Or he's going to be great. Certainly down there.
Well, he can correct us, can't he? He can reach correct.
So Vincent, if you want to correct
if you're not going to listen to this.
But I'm pretty sure. So
yeah, awesome.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Otherwise, not a lot. I'm going to be starting up on that new sci-fi series, Other Life. It hasn't had great reviews, but I think it's worth my while watching it.
Yeah, we'll go in like we do with Space Brains. Joy watch it and see what you can get out of it,
Yeah, for sure. So that's what I've been doing, just a lot of editing there and trying to record some music as well. I've got a cover song, an acoustic version of a song that I'm supposed to be recording for an audio drama that is being, that's not science fiction, but...
Yeah.
But it's
in the creative.
It's nice. It's a nice bit of music. So
yeah,
keep an eye. I'll let you know more about that when it's recorded and available.
Very good.
I won't be singing. I'm just playing the guitar.
Okay, fair enough.
And yourself, how's your script and all that sort of thing going?
Yeah, I've actually put in for the Screen West fast pitch application. So it's a development fund. So I've actually put in that same script. So. Yeah, it's for $20,000, and that is to sort of, they want to know what you'd spend that 20 grand on. So I sort of broke that down for them. But working off, the bit of feedback I got at that director's immersive, and then this was sort of the logical next step. Fingers crossed that comes through. That'd be really great. So
20,000, that seems a lot for what would you
for development?
What are you expected to do with that?
So there is information like Australian rates. For example, a script editor would cost you about $6,000, and that's for a full edit of a whole draft. Versus say like a script reader, Australian rates are something like $500 to $1,000. And that's very different. That's just a read through feedback. Yeah. A script editor would actually go through everything. So that might take them a week or 2 weeks. I think it probably going at those rates, something like that. And then also to pay yourself like a writer's fee to develop from that edit. And I also put a little bit of money in there for a table read. So the idea of having actors and
that would be so cool.
Just like one day, I looked up the actor rates for one day full time, for professional.
So do you like record that as well?
Well, you could, yeah, you definitely could. But just for that purpose of listening and, running through the script.
Well, I thought recording it would be great because trying to when you're at the table, you probably go, oh yeah, that sounds really awkward, or that doesn't sound true to, or that sounds really good. You just doing the scribbled notes, I'm sure you do that, but having a video to watch back and go, so you compare your notes to what you saw again, and you could,
And I think also you could get, you've mentioned it with recording for your audio podcast, your audio drama stuff, like you could realize that line's not right like that, and the actor might as well, and the actor might say, oh, this would be better like this, or that there needs to be a beat there that's not in the script, or like there's just that. So I thought that would be a cool idea. That kind of comes out at about $2,000 because I need 6 actors. So you're just paying them that base rate, something like $350 for the day. And I'd imagine you'd be able to run through the script probably twice or something like that with them over a course of a day. Yeah.
Yeah, you probably do like a quick go through and then a...
Yeah, and they might have, I don't know, maybe you spend a bit of time at the start, like, talking about the characters themselves and stuff like that. But yeah, that was an idea that actually from the director's thing, one of those directors said they do a table read of a script with the cast that they've got. And sometimes that actually decides if the script needs a bit more reworking or not, even at that stage where it's ready to go. So it's just for development, that application. It's not... to take it into film. But the thing is, if you're successful with that, you're then more likely to go to that next step, Oh,
well, if you can, I'd imagine if you're presenting a script to anyone who might even consider producing it, they would probably ask, have you had this edited? Before I even look at it, have you had someone else go over it? Have you done anything at all, or is this something totally raw? Yeah,
especially when you're what they call in the film industry, you need screen credits, And I've made films, but what they mean by screen credits is they mean ones that have been funded by people like Screen West or Screen Australia, or they've been in cinemas. So, like if you just make a short film and it goes to festivals or you put it online, that doesn't count. It has to be shown in cinemas.
Yeah, well, they want a commercial product.
Yeah, they want to. It doesn't have to have succeeded as such, but they want to see that previously you have done something. So again, if you're coming out there with a script going, this is the best script ever, it might be, but your first response from a producer with screen credits is like, you're a writer with no screen credits. Like it's a risk. It's a risk. So have you had a script editor with credits? Have a look at it. Actually, I have, and they like it. Oh, okay. Let's have a discussion, So anyway, so we'll see what happens with that. Yeah, and then just also got a couple little. I've mentioned before, just trying to move towards making a couple little shorts coming up. So yeah, fictional shorts. So just sort of the baby steps towards that.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so it'll be good. Just trying to keep plodding along with it. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm going to be writing a science fiction book. Maybe next. I've got this idea that's coming, but I've got to get through my current workload at the moment. It's otherwise, I haven't won Powerball yet.
That's right.
$150 million tonight.
Yeah. Well, that would be what would be amazing about that 20 grand by paying myself as well as, I could take 3 weeks off work, for example, my day job, and just commit to, spending 6 hours a day on the script. You know what I mean? Like, and working with a script editor.
And I guess that's why they sort of include that in there because likewise, if I was going to be doing anything along those lines, to do a proper, you want to give it your best shot. You can't just be sort of trying to pull an hour or 2 out after work when the kid's gone to bed. Yeah.
So by paying yourself, and I think that the industry with any of those funds, they're big on that. Like that's why it's like industry rates. Stuff like that. Like they don't, being a funding body, they don't want anyone to be underpaid. It's not cash in hand. It's all official above board, because they are, at the end of the day, those bodies are trying to encourage more jobs in the industry. So they want to keep, if everyone just gets paid cash and a couple $100, well, it's not an industry, is it? So
no, people aren't going to have the commitment.
No. So fine when you're starting out, but need to take it to that next step. So we should break a bit into the plot and the cast and all that. I gave that little blurb at the start. It's The Wandering Earth by Frant Guo, I believe.
And I think we're going to give a really big disclaimer on this one. Is that the names in this are obviously all Chinese.
Yes.
And being obviously not Chinese, in fact, by me using the phrase Chinese rather than the actual Chinese phrase for Chinese, you can tell I have no clue.
Yeah, so those names is, and looking at this on IMDb after watching Frant also was one of the writers, but 5 writers. You know, it was a intensive writing group, that, isn't it? So I'm not sure why that was the case. There wasn't any information about that, but and it seemed that it wasn't like people have been brought on at different times. I think they've written this as a group or something. So
it is derived from a novella,
yep,
The Wandering Earth, which is a lot slower paced and more in depth, and it actually travels over several generations.
Yeah.
So there's different aspects of the various issues that come up.
Yeah.
Over the generations of this Wandering Earth. So I think maybe they just said straight up, okay, trying to turn this into a single movie, and it's a 2-hour movie, so it's a longish one, but even still, trying to turn all of that content into something that's like a blockbuster science fiction action movie.
Yeah.
I think, maybe they weren't confident, or maybe they just saw this as a crisis and they came together.
Yeah.
And with their hope, they built a $1 billion movie.
That's right. And I think that you've just said it then, and that's something I wanted to say right here on the outset, that this is a Chinese blockbuster. You know what I mean? Like, and it runs the gauntlet, you know, with any of American or Hollywood blockbusters. And I think we're probably seeing with a film like this that they're matching it, really, don't you think? Like,
I think so. This had a very sort of as a disaster style film feeling.
Yeah.
And it really matched things like The Day After Tomorrow or Armageddon. Those sorts of Armageddon is probably the closest style. It's going into space and
multiple characters. Yeah,
there's different characters in there, and they've got
action
struggles and a bit of emotional content there with dads and children and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So. But I just wanted to note that it doesn't come across looking cheap or nasty or foreign, you know, coming from a point of view of watching a lot of American films, and sometimes you can notice that difference in quality. The quality is really in this movie.
This movie here, it was one of the highest grossing, I think it was the highest grossing Chinese film, something like $600-700 million in its box office taking.
Yeah, right.
And it's very popular in China.
Yeah.
Did very well, and I think it was because they pulled out all the stops and they've gone, well, we can do, high action, blockbuster type stuff. Too.
And we've seen a lot of this. I can say from a little bit of knowing inside the film industry, there is a lot of Australian Chinese co-productions that have been happening, maybe for the last 10 to 15 years, and they've built up a bit in intensity. And I think from what people in the industry are saying, what they've tried to do is they've made them co-productions with Australian creative people, and they've been trying to learn a lot about, how to make film for the, for the Western audience in a way. So they've sort of, because that's what this film sort of felt like a bit. It felt like a Western film, but it was just Chinese.
It was interesting because I watched a movie on Netflix, a few months ago now, called The Great Wall. I don't know if you've seen that one. So that is Matt Damon. Like, Matt Damon.
Not the South Park.
Yes. But if Matt Damon wants to contact you, go ahead. But that was a funny movie because that wasn't promoted as a Matt Damon. I didn't even realize until I was watching the movie, and on walks Matt Damon, and there's a couple other guys I definitely recognize. There was William Dafoe.
Okay, yeah.
He was the alchemist Westerner fellow who was also trying to get away from the wall, but was kind of stuck.
Okay.
So there's a few sort of big Western names, but that felt like a Chinese movie.
Right.
And it was it was a co-production.
Yep.
But that sort of felt a lot like maybe it was an American movie trying to get some play in China.
Right. They're going that up.
But they sort of kept, so they had Matt Damon as the primary lead.
Yeah.
But then they had a couple of the Chinese stars were big names in their own right as well.
Yeah. And I suppose that's the thing with this. Like, I mean, I don't know the actors, the Chinese actors. They didn't try to do that. There's no American actors in there. They're all Chinese. But the feel of the movie did feel like Armageddon or Deep Impact or, as you said, The Day After Tomorrow, like one of these big sort of survival movies, big action scenes, big sequences, never-ending kind of complicated.
Over the top drama crisis, the whole Well, the whole planet is being moved.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's going to fall into Jupiter.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the same as like the,
You know, everything, isn't it? It's like the trucks are, you know, hooning down a snowfield freeway and smashing into each other. It's all that sort of high octane action. You know, it's definitely science fiction, this film, but there's big action moments.
They even managed to get a minigun in there, like like we saw with Predator last.
That's right. Yes, they did, didn't they? So yeah, that's a little bit. So the writing credits go out to Gong Gia, John Xi, Yan Dongzu, friend Guo. I do apologize. Sorry, apologize.
Yeah.
I'm apologizing. And this one, Yang Zaizu, or
Probably Ji Shu.
Ji Shu. There you go. A little bit better than that.
Because I had a friend and work colleague in Canberra whose name was, well, we call him John, but his first name was actually Jian,
Yeah.
hence John, and his last name was XU, which was Shu.
Shu. Yeah, but
So we got this.
Because I do know a couple of
Ji
people that
Shu,
are Chinese and that they have like the XU, and it's not.
Yeah,
It's something totally.
that's because there's like 1,000 dialects.
Yeah. And it's fantastic culturally, isn't it, for that way? So, and yeah, this was, you said, big blockbuster, made a lot of money in the Chinese box office. And obviously, someone like Netflix are very clever to put this on their streaming service, I think, because, you know, you've got that built in audience in China, and then you've got, well, people like you and I that are interested in different types of films and willing to give things a go. Netflix makes it just the perfect portal, doesn't it? So let's go through the plot, eh? So as we said, at the start of the film, we've got kind of a opening montage of the father and son emotional scene. And we've got, but it is a bit of a montage start, isn't it? Because we get told quite a bit about what's going on.
Yeah, we had a little quick rundown of the sun is going to have a helium flash and it's going to expand and basically swallow up our solar system.
Yeah.
That's a real thing. It's not a real thing that's going to happen to our sun.
Yeah.
There's some really small infinitesimal chance it may be, but no, basically not. It happens to suns in the red giant phase.
Okay.
So give our sun a few billion years, and yeah, you're in danger of this happening.
Yeah. So for the purpose of this story, they've sped that up.
Well, yeah, I think that what they're basically saying is we got it wrong.
Yeah.
It can happen.
So we have this montage, you know, the Earth is kind of dying a bit because of it. We're getting solar flares. If something's not done within the next 300 years, we're in trouble. The father tells us through voiceover that Earth came together like never before, and it's built these massive big thrusters all around Earth on one side.
Earth
engines. And also a satellite in a space station that he is going to be going to monitor Earth progress.
Yeah, they're the navigation. They're pretty bad navigators, really.
Well, really, they were. That's what I did think. I thought, geez, you haven't done a good job. All this time you've been circling. He's been up there for 17 years. Then all of a sudden, one day, it's like,
by the way, you're going to hit Jupiter.
Jupiter. Somebody's like, hang on a minute. Surely you could have predicted that a little bit.
Picked that a few days earlier, surely.
Yeah. But there is an emotional arc as well starts because he says to his son that look up in the space and you'll see me. And that's kind of closes that opening chapter. And when we then are 17 years later, the son is underground. He's living with his grandpa and he's taking off. He's running away that day. And he's kind of got a chip on his shoulder about his dad.
Yeah.
And we learn that pretty quickly. He picks up his sister from school, does a bit of a cool version.
Which is actually a little bit confusing for me because there was clearly no sister and no mother at the start when he's telling him I'm going up to space.
Yeah, I thought it was a girlfriend. That's right.
Yeah, I initially thought it was girlfriend because, 17 years, he's like, what, 20?
Yep.
Maybe, and maybe she's 18?
Yeah.
Coming to the end of year 12?
My presumption was just, that's his girlfriend, like I didn't think. Yeah.
But they explain later.
They explain that later. So they left that open a bit. And he's kind of a bit of a clever cookie with technology, and he's got a bit of a lineup with a bit of an underground gangster to get fake IDs, and they're heading for the surface. And so they get the fake suits and they get fake IDs printed. And the sister's saying, you don't really, you can't survive out there. But his intention, it seems to be very clear. He's going out there, she's coming with him, but he's going to stay out there. in the earth, in the outdoors. Go up a giant escalator, not an escalator, giant lift.
Giant elevator.
Was it 500?
I don't know where they're 500. Oh, they went 500 meters above ground level.
Ground level, yeah.
Because you see them go up like that wall,
Yeah.
man-made wall thing,
Yeah.
to the top there, which
And there's all these other workers that, like, obviously they're doing work on.
Yeah, that surprised me because at first I thought, the Earth, they're going up there, they've got to get these special IDs, and it's sort of basically going to be abandoned.
Yes.
But it's not. It's a hive of activity and industry.
Doing all sorts of things up there, yeah. And interesting, they get to the surface, it's negative 83 degrees. Now, I've never been to a really cold environment. In Australia, can get to 0, and it's cold for us. But and it can get a bit lower, obviously, in places like Canberra.
Like Canberra. Not negative 80 cold.
No.
I've been to Toronto when it was minus 40.
Okay, yeah.
That, I don't know what that was like because we stayed inside the airport and then jumped into a cab and went straight to the airport, to the hotel where we were dropped off in like an underground parking, because I think people die in that temperature.
But there was a great little moment, wasn't there, in that lift, because like all the other workers that were going to exit onto the Earth's surface, like it's coming up to the 500 meters, about to open its doors. They kind of all like hunched down and braced themselves.
They all crouched down.
They all crouched down, but the brother and the sister just stood there going, because they were in awe of seeing Earth's surface. And then the doors open. Of course, it's just like this freezing gale of wind and ice and stuff. Right? So that's why they crouched down. I really liked that. That was kind of a cool little thing. And then we go to the father. Now, he's on this space navigation station, and he's completed the 17 years up there, I believe. And it's his day of retirement. He's getting to come back to Earth to see his son. So, yeah, that's kind of nice timing, isn't it, as a plot point?
His Russian co-worker comes in and offers him a sort of a flask of moonshine. And, being the good fellow, he says, no, that's, I'm still on duty. I don't really want your filthy moonshine. It's a bit gross. And
he tucks it into his space.
So yeah, for later.
For later. He didn't kind of seem like the kind of guy, the father, that would just be out there doing some sort of job in his suit and have a swig of moonshine. No. Oh, I'm glad I've got this on me.
Well, it gets cold out in space.
Yeah. So anyway, they're tearing down. They get into one of these mammoth trucks, and he uses his grandpa.
It turns out his grandfather's a transporter driver.
Yeah, as you said before, this hive of activity. There's all these trucks and workers, and we do get this massive shot when he does manage to drive off this huge truck of all these trucks and cranes and all sorts.
And
of things.
They're digging out the mountains, and
and
it's explained that that's the fuel for they referred to it, and I don't know. So this is something interesting. Mark, you watched the dubbed version and I watched the subtitled version.
Yeah.
So there's going to be slight differences in the script, I think.
I think so.
So I'm not sure what they said in the dubbed one, but they explained this was they referred to it as hard fusion generators that power the Earth engine.
That's what they did say, yeah.
And so they're basically going to dig out the Earth and chuck it in there. And so I don't know how much Earth we're going to have left at the end of the voyage.
I did have that same thought. I'm like, if you just did, because I mean, it was a mammoth operation, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was.
And all these huge cranes and these trucks, and it was like a massive mine site that you'd imagine, here out in Kalgoorlie and stuff. But then that was just happening all over Earth, so pretty full on. He, however, he's had a bit of success. They're kind of driving on this highway, but they get pulled over, arrested, and they're thrown in a jail.
Thrown in a local little prison.
And they do meet this guy that's a cross-Chinese Melbourneite.
So he wasn't referred to as came from Melbourne in the subtitle version at all.
Yeah.
And he only ever referred to himself as a Chinese.
And he had blonde hair, see? So that made...
Yeah, white. And he looked like, if you've seen Tropic Thunder.
Yeah.
Where... yeah, you know the character.
I don't think it was quite that extremity, but yeah.
But he had that weird bowl haircut and goggly eyes. And
he deliberately looked different. They'd casted someone different.
Freaky, yeah.
Dyed his hair and.
I wonder what he looked like to a, native Chinese audience.
Australian.
Well, see, this is the funny thing because we've only been exposed to, by and large, the Chinese that have been presented to us in popular culture. You can imagine some 15-year-old going to watch this in Beijing or something or other. His only experience of Western culture has been some Hollywood movies, some singers, maybe a couple of tourists they've sort of spotted from a distance.
Yeah.
But yeah,
but it's just those natural stereotypes.
You just wonder if they're sort of showing this guy and they sort of go, oh yeah, that's what I expected. That's what I expected of a half Chinese.
Yeah, half Chinese, half Melbourneite.
Yeah, it's like, of course he's going to look like that. That's normal.
No, I thought that was nice. And I think the thing is that for the Chinese, China and Australia has a very interesting relationship. It's a very unique, great partners, good trading partners. We're in the Asia Pacific together. We're the two probably big nations in that way. We have a lot of mining and resources that China need and want and
food
money off. Have food supply as well. Baby formula apparently is the thing. All of those things, and maybe that's why there is a reference there. I'm not too sure. They just picked on this, but quite often in American movies they have an Australian character, don't they? They have that random Australian character
who sometimes has a New Zealand accent.
Yeah,
or a Cockney accent.
So that can be quite funny. So anyway, he's arrested. He's chucked in. Grandpa comes and Grandpa tries to bribe the policeman, which is quite funny. I thought it was a good little funny.
I was wondering about that because you'd never see. I don't really think you'd see that in a Western movie.
No,
and I'm thinking that this might have been sort of a point to show difference of culture after the Wandering Earth has started.
Yeah.
So maybe Grandpa, being older and growing up in an old form of China where you would offer gifts to the police and so forth. Well, not in the modern China. In the modern China, the cop sort of went, yeah, no, it's not really going to work. You're going to prison.
Yeah. And he does.
Which
throws.
I appreciate. I like the fact that, they follow through because you can't. How could you have such an organized movement to shift the earth and the whole world is in on this?
Yeah, you couldn't.
And yet you've got
rebels,
little corrupt police officers.
Yeah. No,
that wouldn't work at all. So I'm quite pleased that they sort of did that. Yeah.
And so they're in jail, and obviously there's a couple of moments they're in jail as a family, and then Earth starts being pulled into Jupiter's orbit, and they're kind of realizing that the satellite station has done a very poor job.
Yeah.
And the prediction is that Earth will head right in, and there's not a lot they can do about it already.
Well, yeah.
That even with everything they could throw at the thrusters, that maybe they, and so the prediction is pretty gloomy very quickly here, and the stakes are raised.
So initially, because of the earthquakes and things, because you're going to have this massive tidal effect, and the tectonic plates are going to move and so on. Had these earthquakes, there's lots of stuff fell down, cities were going out, and thousands of these earth engines turned off.
Yeah. It was starting to be ripped apart.
So they were going, well, the initial thought was, we've got to restart all these engines and get the thrusters back on and steer out of trouble.
Yeah.
Which gives us our first quest, really, in this film.
Yep. And I mean, I think what you just said, that efficiency of the police officer not accepting the bribe, that's what we then see, isn't it? That they do that announcement that all resources.
Yeah, I love that as well.
All resources, doesn't matter what you were doing, are going to be redirected into reigniting every single engine.
First thing the cop does without even questioning, runs over, unlocks the door.
Yeah, because we need.
And then he gets squashed, which is a shame.
But he did what was right, really.
But I really like that because you could well imagine that cop would have been painted. I can only imagine that cop would have been painted as being a bit corrupt. He would have taken the bribe and chuck him in prison anyway.
Yeah.
To maybe squeeze a bit more out of him or something, and then the stuff would be falling down. They're like, you've got to let us out, you've got to. And he'd go, "Nah, you're criminals. You're in prison." I've got the power. But no, this guy, he just runs over, unlocks them. He does get crushed almost immediately.
But he was saving them. It was saving them and the resources. And I reckon that's where that, again, as I said before, this Chinese.
I think it was that Chinese.
Like, to me, I'm like, wow, this is very culturally Chinese.
Yeah, this group movement, if you like, where there's
unified front.
There's a very strong concept of a communal group.
It is. We don't have that in the West. We're not as connected that way. I don't think that it's, like, I think their culture is much more about we're all in this together,
Well, that's how they managed to, not collapse like the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
They've managed to slowly sort of evolve their initially very communist look into this sort of economic communism. I don't know what it is. Like, there are private companies, and it's somewhat capitalist, but it's still very, very centrally planned and managed.
Again, I mean, that thing I said at the start about global warming, like, and they are changing their ways, China. I mean, when they decide to do, well, I suppose what I'm getting at is when they decide to do something for the collective good, they just do it, and they just all seem to work. And it was very noticeable, I think, culturally in this scene, because it was like all resources redirected to here. And I mean, in the movie, they do show Americans, and they do show, other stations.
Japanese.
And so it's not just like the Chinese are doing this, but I think that was kind of the slant coming from Chinese filmmakers and writers. And our key characters get in their truck, and they're trying to go the opposite direction. And we've got all these trucks going to, reignite those fusion burner engines, earth engines, and they get reprimanded that they have to help.
Well, they get pulled over again, don't they? They get stopped.
They get stopped.
And this is when the
soldiers,
the white guy basically admits to terrible crimes.
I know he does.
As a joke, which is kind of a bit, again, I think it's just coming from a different point of view. But the soldiers come on board CN 117 or 171-11 or whatever it is, the rescue group.
Order that their truck has to take the lighter, is what it was in the dub.
Lighter core.
Or lighter core.
Yeah.
To the earth engine. That's what is needed to ignite it, or something like that, as far as I sort of picked up.
Yeah, that was the idea. It's some sort of starter bark or something,
Now, then we cut to the navigation satellite place, the space station, and the resources being ordered that they should all go to sleep.
Yeah, that was a bit strange.
Again, to save resources, which I was a bit like, why would that save resources back on Earth? But computing power or something, maybe?
Yeah.
We do learn that there's actually a deeper reason, an algorithm that's played in the background of, I'm going to call it Boss, not Moss.
Yeah, MOSS in all caps it was, so probably stood for something.
Anyway, so, and the dad, he's kind of slow. He doesn't. Everyone's been ordered into.
Yeah, he's trying to get in contact with his son,
and he can't.
Yeah, he's worried.
And he's worried, but he's also questioning the process, and it's a bit drawn out there. But he's basically gets to a point where he thinks, no, we shouldn't be going to sleep, and he kind of then gets locked in his pad, doesn't he?
And his little hibernation
thing, and he's like trying to fight his way out. And we cut from that, and anyway, then we come back to the truck. And they're driving the lighter core into Shanghai, and it's iced over. We've got some pretty cool effects in it.
Yeah, it looks like it's sort of been, the underground city seems to have been cracked and risen up and exposed. So there's like buildings, and it's just...
So there's like trucks in ice, and there's people in ice, and I think that iconic building in Shanghai, which is kind of like a tall, I don't know if it's an observation because I've never been there, but it's like a really tall, skinny thing with a big bubble.
Yeah, that's up in the ice.
All ice, and so it's this huge wall of ice, very akin to probably Game of Thrones in a way, the Great Wall kind
of. That sort of size as well. Yeah.
It's huge, and they're all sort of in... they're a bit mesmerised by this, and Grandpa gives us a bit of a kind of story about eating his wife's noodles that he didn't like, but he kept...
Oh, the scallion noodles were too salty.
Too salty.
But he would lick the bowl clean every time.
Good laugh at that story.
Yeah.
But as they're kind of going through that, we had... Was it another sort of earthquake?
Yeah, it's another earthquake, and there's like the chasm starts collapsing, and
collapsing on top of them, and I think one of their vehicles gets totally crushed, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then they get trapped, they get locked off.
Yeah.
But they see there's a big skyscraper that rises up, peaks above the top of the crevice.
Wall. Yeah.
So they're gonna drag this lighter core.
Yep.
Which they hook up with some ropes and things, and
we
drag it in.
There's a couple of planes that fall out of the sky.
Yeah, the atmosphere is thinning.
Yeah.
The atmosphere is getting too thin. Mayday, mayday. That was actually in English.
Yep.
And you can tell the English in China. I've seen a number of Chinese films, particularly sort of Hong Kong-based ones. And when they have the English, they don't seem to be terribly interested in getting good voice actors for these things. Because it's like, mayday, mayday, our atmosphere is getting low. We're going to fall out of the sky or something.
I'm not really a pilot. They just don't seem to take it too seriously.
The director doesn't really know how to voice direct me because he speaks Chinese.
But it was, like we're getting the impression the world is caving in. And you're right, they run into this tower and they want to climb up the top and they have to climb up through the elevator chute. So it's a good...
Because obviously the elevator doesn't work.
No, the elevator doesn't work. Whatever, years old. And
all right, well, there's that little tense moment where they chuck the ropes down and said, bring up the lighter core, and Liu Qi, or whatever his name is, again, they never actually said that name in the Chinese version I was watching, is Liu Qi sort of sounding. Who am I? I'm not a linguist. And he says, no, people first.
Yeah.
And he's really insistent. People, and I was looking going, dude, the people don't freaking matter that much. That lighter core doesn't get to your Earth engine, you're crushed by Jupiter. And all your people can
save the cat moments, isn't it? Really, like it.
But that's what it was. It was establishing that he's got a very strong people safety sort of thing. And so they go, well, just bring everyone up. And so they do. Yeah, they start bringing everyone up, and the lighter core swinging around, and the walls keep collapsing a little bit, and finally it's one of the soldiers and Grandpa. And the lighter core, and they get the lighter core up, and then it's just the soldier and Grandpa, and then the elevator sort of drops, and so they cut the rope. Yeah. And the soldier swings Grandpa in, but then gets taken out by the elevator. Yeah. Turns out Grandpa unfortunately ran out of oxygen. Yeah. So
his suit had a hole in it.
Yeah, he is losing his oxygen, and he was not having a good time. And there's much drama and dismay. Yeah,
the brother wanted to save him. And the soldier's like, you can't, he's a couple of levels down.
Yeah, it's all over Red Rover.
And he's dying. And he does say something very courageous to them about, family and I think hope comes in there, and you got to live your life, and that's sort of like, inspirational.
And this is also the scene where we come across the fellow who is tunneling out of the top of the building onto the cliff using his minigun.
Yes.
His 6-barrel spinning thing that shoots lots of stuff, which made me stop. And I thought, why do they have guns?
Yeah.
Like, nothing in this film had yet portrayed any reason why they would carry guns. No. Like, there was no ice bandits, no wild monsters. Like,
well, we don't see that, but maybe there was deserters. Maybe that's why they needed guns, and
Yeah, it just didn't portray it that way. Like, maybe they could have shown as a driving past like a distant scene where there was like a bit of a gunfight or something, so that you go, okay, that's why they came.
But even like a deserter, like we just see a deserter and they have to pull them over and they're shooting them or something.
Yeah, because I just found it a bit odd that they got this heavy artillery cannon.
Yeah,
and they're all carrying rifles. It's probably fair enough that they're carrying at least a sidearm or something, being that they're security personnel. But there's like this anti-tank rifle thing.
I think there was a little, maybe it's probably been done in a few films, but it was a bit like Predator, wasn't it? That big gun.
It was.
Firing and the bullets fall.
I can't help but think that maybe that was for the trailer.
Yeah.
In the trailer, you can bet there would have been a shot with this gun pulling out and then firing up, and people would go, whoa, what are they going to do with that? Actually, they're tunneling out of their building for that one.
Anyway, so they're out in the snow, and then they basically, the son is upset about losing his grandfather. The soldiers are going to press on, and they basically say, well, you don't need us anymore. We don't have a truck.
Yeah.
We're sort of redundant to you. And it's a 3-hour walk to get to the engine. So they do part ways. So the soldiers go off with the lighter core, and the brother and the sister kind of mourn.
And the white guy.
The white guy, yeah.
His name, I don't remember what his name is.
The Melbourne guy. They will head off in a different direction, but they sort of mourn the grandpa for a bit. We then cut to the father, and he's fighting this gas in his hypersleep pod, and he's trying to break free, and he does. He breaks free.
He rips a bit of circuitry out or something. Yeah,
he manages to open it physically. Boss is not happy with him and sort of warning him to get back in. And I kind of thought it's a little bit like 2001, but it's much nicer.
Yeah.
Get back in, all resources deviated, like the commands were very, very nice to him, even though he's really disobeying this.
Yeah, it didn't have that menacing howl.
No, and he wakes up the Russian.
Yeah, Boss does.
Yeah.
because he wakes up two guys and says, "You've got to, like, someone or other has malfunctioned. You've got to get him back into a thing."
Yeah.
And the Russian goes, "Oh, okay." And the other fella just sort of rolls over and goes back to sleep.
Yeah. But then the Russian's like, the dad explains to him something's wrong.
Yeah.
Things aren't, this is not right. What's this protocol? It's not happening. And so they come up with a plan themselves. And then we go back to the military group arrive and at their destination, and it's torched.
Yeah, they get to Hangzhou, I think.
Yeah, and it's the whole thing is the engine is blown out.
There's been some sort of big earthquake thing there, and everything's smashed and crashed.
Yeah, it's just done. And so they sort of have a moment there, don't they, where they all kind of
they have a bit of a tiff.
They have a tiff
about
and he ends up shooting the lighter core. He destroys it, doesn't he?
Well, the woman does. Yeah, the
does.
The woman soldier, she shoots it up and says, "Okay, enough fighting."
Yeah.
And that sort of shocks the others. They kind of go, "Oh, okay." There's not really any argument now about what to do with this lighter core because
this is why they need guns, Surrey. They just like to shoot up things.
Yeah,
but just.
And then there's a tense moment where he shoves a gun in her face and then fires off to the side, and
because he's saying my wife and daughter died or something. They're for nothing. And the grandson they've found another vehicle.
One of the crashed aeroplanes had a transporter in it.
So they get in that, and he has a choice, doesn't he? Because they hear the military group, I think, don't they?
Yeah. So because he comes, there's two people in this transporter. Of course, there's like a technician fellow who's a bit philosophical.
Yep.
And must play Dungeons and Dragons because he had his little 20-sided dice that he was playing with.
And that's right, because they couldn't drive the truck, those two guys, but of course the grandson.
Yeah, the grandson could drive.
Yeah.
And when they found out, they go, well, hang on, we've got a lighter core. We've got to get to Sulawesi.
That's right.
It's the torque engines that are going to be the most important ones anyway.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I was. I've lost that in my mind. So but then he has a decision. We're going to go there, or we could go get the military group.
Yeah.
We could go rescue them because they're sort of in the middle of nowhere. And I think without telling the others.
Oh yeah, because the CN 171-11 rescue group, but he basically says the mission is over. He overhears, says,
yeah,
the Hangzhou is gone. We've lost the lighter core. Mission is over.
Yeah,
do whatever. Go home. And so having heard that, he goes, okay, well, no, I want to go get them because this hope
they could help.
We've got a bit of hope here.
So he does. He heads off to get them. Dad overrides boss and reveals that this is actually a authorized program.
Mm.
It's a different program he was not aware of.
Well, he sees also that the space station has deviated.
That's right, it starts to.
It's just moving away from the Earth. And he calls it desertion.
Yes.
He says, this is desertion.
And he can't override. He can't override the system. He can't actually.
And this is where we get those flashes of 2001. It's like, has Boss or Moss kind of taking the helm here a little bit and is doing its own thing?
Yes.
Or is this, it's claiming certain authorities, but we don't really know.
We don't know again.
So they've got to get to the command module, which is this counter-rotating bit. And so they've got to go outside in their spacesuits. And as soon as I saw them get in their spacesuits, I remembered the grog, the booze that's hidden in the panel.
That's right, yeah.
And in fact, the Russian reminds us of it.
Yeah.
Because he's got the little straw and he takes a bit of a suck from the straw of his own suit.
Yeah.
And you can tell, okay, he's boozed his own thing up a bit there.
And they have to do basically, he magnetically overrides the doors. And then they have to do a bit of a space swim, really, like a dangerous space.
Yeah, there's a tense moment where it opens and they go flying out on their tethers.
Yeah.
And the Russian one breaks.
And he's going to hold each other and then they're clambering, across the space station in outer space. And, this thing's twirling around, circling around, huge, piece of machinery that can wipe them out. And Boss does something to them as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, they jump for it, and Boss says, unauthorized external access attempted, deploying lethal countermeasure. Which, okay, why do you have a lethal counter? Did you think that? Well, I guess it's a 2,500 year mission.
Yeah, maybe.
They had to plan for every eventuality.
What if something...
Well, mutiny of the crew disrupting the mission.
Fair enough, yeah. So, and... the Russian gets knocked out, doesn't he? He gets
his faceplate gets broken and he flies
and
off
then he's dying.
disappears.
So then so I think
So Dad gets back into the control module.
he does, doesn't he? And this is where the calculations are revealed that it's too late.
Yeah, and
That it doesn't matter what they do on Earth.
and that's where we find out that it's been relabeled from Project Wandering Earth to Project Helios.
Yes.
And where it's explained that there's a whole heap of
Embryo.
human embryos frozen, and there's like 100 million seeds of
Yeah.
crops and plants and things.
Animals, genetics.
And all the DNA scans of all the animals and stuff. And the space station is going to continue on
Yeah.
in an attempt to colonize,
Yes.
which makes a lot of sense that they had a backup plan because 2,500 years, a lot of things can go wrong.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I suppose the impression was, well, yeah, if humans did become mutiny, well, then a little bit like I Am Mother, maybe Boss is going to raise them, or, there must have been some sort
Boss would just turn off the hibernation.
That's right.
Switch them all off.
And then start fresh with some new embryos.
Get some embryos out. Oh, who knows?
Yeah. So I liked that because I was like, oh, this is a little bit I Am Mother in that way. Yeah. So the space, and that's going to happen. So then they arrive on the way. They're thinking, that's right. They're told, aren't they? Everyone is told from Boss. There's a communication across the world that, although I think, was it something like 70% of the engines were turned on, this and that, but it's too late.
Yeah, there's just not enough thrust.
Not enough thrust to get out of, Jupiter's gravitational pull, and this is the final communication. You go home to your loved ones.
Yeah, what a grim notice.
The mission failed.
What a grim notice that would be. You go home, spend time with your loved ones.
Yeah.
It's all over.
Yeah.
Oh, I when I was watching it, I was thinking, what would you do? You've just been told that that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
It's the world is literally come to an end and say goodbye. And you just got to sit there and wait for however long it was, 17 hours or whatever the time limit was.
Yeah. So they're all, with the son, with the grandson and that, they're all depressed. They want to give up and all those sort of things. And he has a flashback to his father telling him at the start about being in space and looking up, I'll always be above you. And he's pissed off with that because he says, being underground, I could never see him.
He said he'd be a star.
But because of the Venus, he said Venus is full of gases.
Jupiter.
Jupiter,
yes.
Sorry, not Venus. Jupiter. Why am I saying Venus? Jupiter is full of gases, that he has a brainwave that maybe could we...
90% hydrogen, and what's hydrogen? And Grandpa goes, I don't know. No, it's Dad's rocket fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has that sort of that we saw at the start of the movie. And so he has a flash that, can we ignite it?
And this is, what part of this is the end of the Dark Night of the Soul? This is that the B story, which is the flash of insight, which
it is. Yeah.
reveals the new ending.
It does. So they're basically going to blow up the atmosphere, hopefully causing enough of a charge that the planet will then spiral.
So they come up with a plan, and the technician that they found in this extra transporter says that he was the one who programmed the New Year's fireworks display. If you each Earth engine actually has 12 sort of nozzles, and if you bring them 12 or 7, I can't remember now.
Something like that.
Let's call it 12. It's probably 7, but he'll actually put all the thrust through just one.
Yes,
which will give us how many thousand kilometers.
Yep.
Up in the sky.
I liked it. I thought that was a good plan. It sounded good.
I also liked the fact that they shared this with other people.
Yes.
Or the other Earth engines that were in the right spot. There was about another 3 or so Earth engines that shared this and were doing the same plan, which is, again, I think that's a more Chinese approach rather than
just one.
Rather than Bruce Willis going out there by himself to
radar gun and saying one of those log lines that we talked about with the Predator and firing his gun and saving the whole world,
Yeah, so this was, even if we're watching this tense scene where they're trying to, because that's where we go to now, is they want to execute this plan.
Their plan.
But they've got some obstacles in their way.
Yeah.
So one of their first obstacles is the program which restarts. It doesn't shift this thing they call an ignition pin.
Yes.
And they get there and they look at it, and it's a huge piece of machinery.
It's a rock.
And they say, you call that a pin?
Yeah.
And so they've got to basically try and push this manually.
Yep.
And it seems like a ridiculous task for like
Three of them, yeah.
three of them, and then the two others who
Yeah.
don't have the full power suits on. And
We also, he starts running the actual program, the New Year's Eve program, and it loads up to 99%.
oh yeah,
Stops
well,
at 99%.
well they get the lighter core.
Yeah.
It says, well, he's got a huge manual and he's trying to figure out how to do this. And it says, oh, it's all automated. And so, well, I don't know about that. He just says it's automated and the book's going everywhere. And I'm sort of thinking, oh, this is going to be one of those.
Yeah.
This is but that wasn't the trouble.
No.
Because it was fully automated.
Yeah, it was.
They backed up, a little arm came out, took it, plugged it in, it went to close, and it almost closed shut, and there was something was jammed.
Mm.
And so Liu Key had to climb on in there with
Risk his life.
connected by a rope, and he's like kicking these things. And I was looking at it going, dude, have you considered this? Because he kicked the first one out, and the plates dropped and stopped on the next one, and he's like, and then he starts kicking that one out. You're like, oh, that's not going to work well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got these obstacles.
Yeah.
And the daughter, Dodo, her name was Dodo, whatever.
The daughter.
Double D.
I don't know about that, actually.
Not going there. If this is an American film,
It would be.
maybe. But yeah, so she starts giving this, like, asking for help.
Mm.
And Dad up in the space station requests the United Earth government, who's French,
Yes.
which is a nice touch. I think the United Nations is the house, but request, order your people back because everyone's just fleeing, going to the home or whatever. And they say, well, as the United Earth government, we can't make that order.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we don't want to order people from spending the last few minutes they've got with their family. But as an individual, we can open up the global channels and individuals can talk to each other.
Yeah.
And so Dodo does her little speech about hope, where she was initially at school and they're talking about spring and what is hope. And she's kind of like, yeah, whatevs. Although that school scene's a bit interesting. We'll talk about that later. And she gives her speech where she suddenly realizes what hope is. It's this beautiful diamond that shines in the sky and it draws our hearts onwards. And I don't know, it's very poetic and lovely. And we've cut to lots of different little vehicles of rescue crews from different nations, and they all kind of go, except that Japanese guy who shot himself.
Yeah, no, they're not really going for it to begin with, are they? They're kind of, as she's doing the spiel, there's a guy that shoots himself in the head.
Yeah, but
there's others that are like,
by the end of it, she's so impassioned, and you can hear it in her voice, and she's just like she says, I'm just a schoolgirl, but
yeah,
I'm here. I'm doing the best we can because I have hope.
Yeah.
And everyone finally goes, okay, screw it. And en masse, all the vehicles do these big U-turns and go roaring back. And then we're back to the pin where their suit motors are starting to burn out and they can't push the pin in. It's a hopeless task. And then he's like, I'll give you a hand. Yeah. Me too.
Yeah, they all come in. So they come in, they start pushing this pin, and it does actually start properly.
Yeah, it's like a massive rugby scrum.
Yeah, and so they're doing that. They're straining. Our main character, he kicks out that final thing, and then he's yanked out before being squashed.
Yeah, old Whitey jumps, actually, because Whitey's been a bit of a coward, a bit uncertain of character, but he grabs hold of the rope and he jumps and hauls him out, and they both survive.
And there's the other guy, because of the program not loading, there's like
he's got
voltage plug.
Rewire a panel or something.
And he does that, but he dies doing it, and he gets crushed, I think, doesn't he? He gets hit on the head or something. And but anyway, then the program loads. So automatically those three challenges have kind of all ticked all their boxes.
Yeah, as soon as that hope was addressed.
That's right. They all found another gear. But I mean, that was great writing, wasn't it? Because it's pushing, like, here's our plan, but none, each step of the plan failed. And they were all really determined to try to make it work, but it just wasn't working, and they needed that little bit of extra help. So they get the lighter in, the program's loaded, people came and helped, they're united, the beam goes into space, and it doesn't make it.
It's not long enough.
It's just shy of the 7,000 kilometers that beam needed to get to. It's just not quite, I think it gets to 5 something or something by memory. And then the father on the space station realizes that, well, hey, we have enough fluid on this space station to kind of ignite it and do that final bit.
Yeah.
And sacrifice himself. So Boss denies him that. but he overrides him by using the alcohol.
Yeah, he chucks a
He throws
molotov.
it at him.
Basically, yeah, and it ignites on the sparking bits.
He says the line, doesn't he? He says, "Why is alcohol not allowed in space?"
Why was it banned by the Russian space missions? Yeah,
Something like that, because it instantly ignites. But I loved how he just threw that at Boss and it just blows him up.
But the United Earth government, though, ends up granting him permission as well.
Yeah, they do. They grant.
And so and I was a bit worried because he was loaded up with all his hibernating people.
Yeah, but no,
But
he just ejected.
he ejected them. There's an ejection system, so they ejected. Presumably, they must return to Earth in some controlled manner.
Yeah, which I had a little interesting note. Episode 1, Passengers. Isn't this the sort of almost opposite of that? Because they didn't do that in Passengers. There was no way, was there? I kind of thought, here is the solution. The pods are all their own little special safety.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it just ejected and they were a big ring of pods.
Yeah, they'd thought about this.
Yeah, they thought about everything on this space station. And so he's on a suicide mission, the father with the spaceship. He's heading towards it. And he has that moment with his son, doesn't he?
Yeah.
A nice moment. The son doesn't really like it, but I suppose the father speaks his piece. And he ignites Jupiter. He bam, the shock waves hit Earth.
Nudge it out,
yeah. Earth.
Nudge it far enough away that the engines can take over and continue its mission.
Engines kick in and everyone's cheering. But the son and the daughter, because of that shock wave, I guess, which you'd imagine, I was thinking this when it was happening, wouldn't Earth really feel this?
If it's a strong enough shock wave to actually shift the planet.
Yeah.
I have a strange feeling that you wouldn't want to be on the planet when it's shifted.
They kind of talked about that because they were sort of get underground and, be as safe as possible.
It's one of those things that's when the elevator's falling, jump at the last minute, you'll be okay.
But the son and the daughter, they're kind of trying to get to as far away as possible in the truck, and the truck just gets hammered.
Oh, and everyone goes over the cliff.
And they're falling. And the son grabs on, but the daughter, his sister, keeps falling, and so he dives after, and it's as though they hit the ground.
Yeah.
But as another kind of little thing that we did see earlier in the film was this big ball.
A couple of times he used his little safety ball, expandy ball thing.
He's actually in the ball, and he's
like a Zorb.
Yeah, Zorb. But it's a good last minute sort of, here we've saved the planet, but they're dying, they don't make it.
Yeah, I was wondering if they were going to have them all die. Because again, watching a Chinese movie, I wasn't sure what the standard process was. Was it common in Chinese movies to have a very strong theme of sacrifice or not? So
Earth is saved and they're okay, and it's really back to work.
Yeah, we get 3 years later.
Yeah,
we get a bit of a recap of the Earth coming together and doing all the rest of it, and it was quite nice to see them then going through. Some of the tunnels in the city and stuff was all brighter and cleaner and nicer. It's like everyone has been rejuvenated in their spirit, whereas at the start of the film it was a bit darker, a bit grimier. And that gangster dude, we see him at the end, and he's
seems like he's
laughing, and he's a bit cooler and a bit nicer, and so you get the idea that basically, I think, this near-death experience that the whole planet has had, and certainly I was reading that in the book. It wasn't so clear cut that it was just everyone joins together and flies out. There was some debate about, is the sun actually going to explode or not? And do we have to go to another planet? Do we just have to shift out our orbit a little bit? There's some protests about, no, we don't believe you. You're just scaremongering us.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that this movie sort of starts after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's sort of that grim where people they have pulled together, but they're a bit grudgy. They're not real happy about it.
No, because they're living underground. It's maybe not as good as it was sold to them. They're a bit like, because that's really the grandson, isn't he? He's a bit. Maybe he wants to go up to the surface and just kind of live a life. Who cares if it's too rough and rugged? I don't want to live underground. It's shitty.
He wants to be able, I think he sort of explained it there. He said, "Oh, my father lied. He said that I could just look up and see him as a star, but I'm underground.
Yeah.
I can't see Jack."
Yeah. So anyway, and he is driving the truck, and
And then he has a little accident
So-
reminiscent of his initial one.
Sisters there, so the presumption is they're gone, they're working, they're part of the team, aren't they? And that's the end. It's a big blockbuster.
They're truck drivers.
Truck drivers. That's very good. Okay, that's good. Good job. Good long career. So, what about the latter results here, Surrey? So, for me, I am putting this in at number 9, which is under Revolt and above The Darkest Dawn. So that's where I'm mixing it into my latter results there. What about yourself? Where are you sort of fitting into the movies that we've had a look at?
Well, yeah, just with Passengers, I think. It touched on many of the similar sort of bits and pieces. And it was, that's where I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Just because I can.
Yeah.
I liked many aspects of it. I liked the audacious nature of moving a whole planet.
Yeah, I loved that. I
That's-
really loved that. So that was the sci-fi, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's quite outrageous, but
Yeah.
but when you get over the idea of it, you go, actually, if you're going for a 2,500 year voyage, and this has always been the problem we've had
Yeah.
with things like Passengers, for example, everything, these movies where you've got really long time spans, and science fiction has come up with various arc ships, where they hollow out an asteroid, but you've got to shift, like the whole planet is in danger. This isn't just a colonization effort. This is to rescue all of humanity.
Yeah.
So once you get over the initial thought of, well, it seems like it probably wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But you go, actually, it makes a lot of sense because we've already got this planet.
Yeah.
It works well. If we just park it in a new orbit, spin it up, breed up some animals, it might be a little bit, I mean, it's going to be quite a bit different.
Yeah, but like, I suppose that's the thing. You think about this moving the Earth, it was a 2,500 year mission. And then say we get it to that new solar system and then we reset it and it's there. It's kind of like, well, then they probably had the plan like, oh, it's going to then take 1,000 years to kind of get things happening again, isn't it?
Well, you've got to wonder, you're talking about a civilization that has spent 2,500 years wandering through deep space, living underground. Are they even going to know how to live on a surface? Like,
yeah, that's true.
Like a 2.5, like, yeah, to put that in perspective, you go back 2,500 years, 500 BC. No, it'll be a different 100 generations. They said, 100 generations later, these people will be turning up. There'll be new religions. There'll be new belief systems.
Yeah.
Maybe you can imagine partway along the way they go, we've come up with everything we need here. Why do we want to stop and run another?
Let's keep going.
Let's keep going.
Let's see what else is out there.
Like, what difference does it make to us at this point? Because imagine go back 100 years, like 100 generations.
Yeah.
Like my ancestors 2,500 years ago are so far removed from me today that I have no desire, interest, or even knowledge of their lifestyle.
Yeah.
I could only make guesses.
Well, and what if someone, I mean, like, we have people born that change humanity. So you'd imagine along that path, someone might come along and invent something or come up with a new technology, because they just would. This is what humans do, don't we?
Well, this is also the same thing with like new religious groups.
Yeah.
I've just been...
If you converted everyone to not believe in shifting Earth anymore, and the rebels, that's maybe when you need the guns.
Yeah.
Like what if all the underground people went, because of religious reasons, like they did come up with a new religion, they're like, we don't want the Earth to move anymore. We want to live here.
How about we use the Earth engines to warm our atmosphere and just live
here,
drifting through space?
Yeah.
Very.
What about a best scene? We've gone through all the plot points.
Best scene
that you really like?
Okay, I really liked the vomiting in the space helmet
that was
scene.
Pretty funny.
I liked it was a very quick way to sort of establish some characters and some personalities, but also inject a bit of humor, because initially they're having a rough time and the guy's puking in his helmet, and at first it seems it's just going to be a throwaway scene.
Yeah.
But then they've got that bit, helmet's on, and he's got this helmet, and it's not just a little bit of chuck in there. It's full. Like, it's about as full as you're going to get.
Yeah.
And he starts having that little tussle with the other fellow, and the other guy, that was what his response back was like, we all must die at some stage, or whatever it was. Death is normal.
Death is normal, people.
Yeah.
Take the vomit scene. Yeah.
So I found it was a well placed piece of humor, but also sort of a bit of a character portrayal there, and
they didn't. The funny thing
endeared us.
There's no outcome. Like, the next thing you know, they have their helmets on.
Yeah, it's
like and he's not like he's covered in spew or anything. So that's a nice little thing. We said in the plot points, but I thought the connection with Boss to 2001, like there was a connection there. There's obviously a very different sort of machine, but that idea of the being ordered to do something that you don't want to do. But what I liked in this was actually when he first went into that control room, that father, he just picked up the fire extinguisher and threw it at Boss.
Yeah.
And it kind of like knocked it off. But then there was another one.
Yeah, second one came down.
And you're like, oh, mother, I just love that he picked up the fire extinguisher and just bolted at him. And then he did the same with the booze. Like it was, when we knew he was going to use it for something, but he just like threw it at Boss and it torched it, and I liked that because when you do take 2001, that's such a slow burner, that whole thing. And it's great with Hal, but, how he deactivates Hal. But in that, it was just like an instant, gratification of the machine, So that was a scene that I really liked. I thought the elevator scene was also a really good scene.
Yeah, very tense.
Very tense. That really built up. And the same with, like we just said, when the son was kicking that lighter core, that last thing, and the thing was on top of him. Because I just thought, he's going to get squashed, isn't he? Like, he has to.
I know. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
Otherwise, but I was
not watching this on a big screen. I think if you watched this on a big screen, you would have really been biting. I would have been biting my fingernails, because that was really tense. I was only watching on my laptop, but yeah, I thought he's going to get squashed here, and that the white guy just kind of jumps and pulls him out, and it collapses in just that skin of your teeth, isn't it? So I thought they were good scenes, but like they were really well paced. Like that's that action that I was saying at the start of tonight's episode.
Yeah, it gives you that reminiscence of some of those survival films, sci-fi survival.
Everything is coming down to that last minute, so that's great. And what about a scene I didn't really love was the prison. I got the bribe scene. I thought that was cool, and I kind of got the plot scene, but yeah, that Melbourne guy, like he was a bit weird, and it was a bit funny, and then
it was a bit goofy, wasn't it?
It was a bit goofy in the context, and even then when Grandpa's in, he's like really relaxed about being in prison, and I know nothing's happened like that. I haven't had the earthquake and that, but yeah, I wasn't really loving that scene that much. It seemed a bit odd for what had happened and also what was going, but I think there was a bit of Chinese cult.
Well, having watched a lot of cult movie Hong Kong films from back in the day, it's actually quite common sort of scene where they have like the person, particularly the older person, looking especially cool in a prison situation.
Yeah.
So I am wondering if there's some sort of throwback to other films. Maybe there's like a series of films, and that was kind of almost like a remade scene, and you imagine the Chinese audience is going, "Oh yeah, that's pretty. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, no, I get that." Yeah, and we're also watching, going, "It's a bit awkward."
Yeah.
They're just kind of sitting there, and
we'll go with it. So, what about the science? Sorry, what do you want to pick on with the science of this wandering Earth? Because
well, the question, of course, I think the obvious question is, what would it actually take? Could you shift a planet?
Earth, yeah.
What sort of, because it seems outrageous, and it
does.
It clearly is. The short answer is no, you can't in the timescales they were referring to.
Yeah.
The longer answer is there's several methods you could use given time scale.
Yeah.
And so there's a real thing that we have. The sun is slowly getting hotter and bigger.
Yep.
It will eventually engulf the solar system. As about 10% increase in heat, shall we say, reaching the Earth every billion years. So in a couple billion years, we're going to be finding it too hot to live.
Yeah.
So the question is, could we? It has been addressed. What about we shift the Earth's orbit, it's just out a little bit?
Yeah, yeah.
Because you only have to shift it out for a 10% increase in heat. You only have to shift like maybe 5% of your radius.
A little bit, yeah.
Just shift it, just nudge it out of the way, and we'll maintain about the right sort of levels there.
And then in a billion years, we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, and well, you can do it gradually over the billion years, because it's not like at the 1 million year mark, boom, it's 10% hotter. It's a gradual scale. So
that's true.
So yeah, the Earth is approximately 6 times 10 to the 24 kilograms, which sounds like not much, but it is
huge.
It is an astonishing amount of weight. So you need some thrust to shift that.
Shift that, yeah.
And I've got the equations. Plenty of people have done them. I haven't had to do them.
How many of these Earth engines would I have to build, Surrey? I mean, come on. Do the math.
Well, so one of the basic things, so you're going to need 227 billion newtons of force.
Right. So what's that relatable to?
And that's only to shift, that's to provide an acceleration of 1.2 microns per second per year. So
that's really slow moving.
Well, we only have to shift over 1 billion years.
Yeah.
So we've got 1 billion years to shift that distance.
Okay.
So, but you're still going to need 227 billion newtons of force. So the Saturn V rocket, which has been the largest single nozzle rocket that we've ever gone and produced, it had 33.4 million newtons. So like that sounds pretty good, right? So we'd only need 6,796 of them.
Right.
Which we could easily do. Like, Germany was producing 4,500 V2 rockets in 1944 alone, just that 1 year. So
yeah, so if we really focus.
If we went, let's build these things, we could crank this out a year and a half sort of thing. Not a problem. However, of course, the problem comes down to fuel, because the exhaust thrust of the Saturn rocket is about 3,000 meters per second. The way you move something forward is by chucking something backward, right? Newton's first law. Yes, equal and opposite reactions.
Yeah.
So you've got to throw something at 3,000 meters per second in one direction to impart some force in the other direction. So the question is, how much stuff would you have to chuck out of these rockets? You would need to use 1/3 of the Earth mass. So 1/3 of the Earth would be used up in moving us 5% of our orbital distance.
Yeah.
Clearly unsustainable.
Yeah, and I mean I think that was the thing in the film itself, was it was such a mass scale of digging and cranes and trucks and all that I did have the question, I mean, wouldn't we just be digging up like the whole Earth to be able to move it that far?
Yeah, I was reading another analysis which basically said to shift us out to orbit Jupiter, we would need 85% of the Earth.
Yeah.
15% of the Earth would make it, like the moon would make it to Jupiter.
Yeah.
But like that's not the whole story though, because that's if we're using Saturn V rockets.
Yes.
Which have very low ejection speed.
Yeah.
Because, of course, the higher the speed that you chuck it out, the less mass you actually have to throw out.
Yeah.
But the more energy you need in order to accelerate it.
Mm.
So we've got ion thrusters, which we talked about on Passengers.
Yep.
And they were powered by fusion generators. So ion thrusters, we could get, say, 60,000 meters per second.
Yep.
Which means we could use an equivalent less fuel. So 60,000, 5 times less fuel, but we'd need a whole lot of energy because these are electric propulsion. We would need somewhere in the region of 13,620 terawatts of power, which is 800 times the entire Earth's human power production at the moment.
But again, that could be achievable if
fire up some fusion generators, as we're talking about with Passengers. One, all of Western Australia would be powered by 2 fusion generators.
Yeah.
And if we improve the technology a bit, because this occurs sometime in the future. There was a stadium with a 2044 Olympic Games sign on it. So you can imagine 50 years, 60 years in the future, maybe they've revised these things. And they could get some fusion, and they had big fusion generators.
Yeah.
But would still basically be, let me see how much. I was just trying to find it. There was would still be using way too much of the Earth. So what about a photon rocket, a massive laser? Because that obviously has an ejection speed of the speed of light, which means we don't need much mass at all to impart this small bit of thrust. But we do need we need 4 million times the current output of power of the Earth.
Right.
So yeah, not so good. But there's other ways. There's gravitational slingshots.
Right.
So there's this idea that you go and you haul asteroids, comets, into close Earth orbit. So they come flying in at huge speeds and they pass by Earth, and there's a slight gravitational pull as they get pulled away, and they pull Earth just a little bit. And so you line up enough of these things to come by at a regular pace. You'd have constant comet streaks through the sky, and just slowly, but over the course of many years, hundreds of years, thousands of years, you'd start shifting the Earth's orbit.
Yeah, right.
And again, it doesn't really work. So the short answer is, of course, no, you can't do what they did in the Wandering Earth. And these Earth engines in the book were about 2 kilometers taller than Mount Everest. So they're about 13 kilometers tall. Because, of course, one of the problems is you've got this massive thruster
Yeah.
the Earth's atmosphere, if it's inside the Earth's atmosphere, you're going to be blowing the Earth's atmosphere out into space.
Yeah.
And doing that would use up a lot of your thrust effort,
Yeah.
burning the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So you want them high. You probably want them up higher than 13 kilometers. You probably want them more like 1,000 kilometers.
Yeah.
So they're not in the atmosphere. But if you could get your fusion generators up that high and all the rest of it, you'd still run into the problem of not enough fuel. But maybe what you could do, you could harvest fuel on the way through, because you're passing by Saturn, go through the rings. You could haul in a whole bunch of stuff, capture that in the Earth's orbit.
Yeah.
They've got a 2,500 year plan here. They could, I'm sure they could come up with something.
Yes.
So it was certainly very interesting that they do these things. And the other one they mentioned there, is the Roche limit. They mentioned it a few times without explaining what that is. So it's basically when you've got a great big celestial body like Jupiter, it has a gravitational field around it, and gravity, of course, is inverse square distance. So it's very strong, very close in, and as you go out, it gets progressively weaker. And Earth is held together by gravity.
Yep.
1g of gravity, as it turns out. And as you approach Jupiter, you're going to get Jupiter will be pulling on the one side of Earth harder than the other side of the Earth is pulling on it.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So Earth will start elongate. Oh, just bang my mic. Will start elongating, and when you hit this Roche limit, that's the point where the pull of Jupiter versus the pull of the back half of Earth is sufficient that gravity no longer operates.
Right.
And Earth will essentially crumble into dust and will turn into a ring around Jupiter.
Yeah.
Like that's where Saturn's rings come from. So something comes up close to Saturn, it just breaks apart, starts orbiting, or crashes into the planet. Either way. So that's the Roche limit, which is very interesting. I thought that they sort of bring that up. They didn't explain what that was. It's just that it was going to be bad.
Yeah.
You can kind of picture it from they had a little picture diagram that you saw, which it didn't sort of show it breaking up, but it was just basically, it showed that when it passed that, it quickly dove into the ground.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
But yeah, and then there's that final thing where they ignited the Jupiter, which I quite like. Very good that they showed that the atmosphere was being drawn off.
They did, yeah.
And oxygen, and I was wondering actually at what temperature the atmosphere would freeze.
Yeah.
Because you're moving away from the sun, and you've got the dark side of the planet now.
Yeah.
So one side would be perpetually nighttime.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a certain point at which the atmosphere would just start condensing.
Yeah.
And dropping down to the planet. Minus 84 degrees on the bright side obviously is warm enough to keep atmosphere going, although carbon dioxide would start dripping out, which actually makes it very difficult to breathe.
Yeah.
Because the reason that your brain tells you to inhale is not because you're running out of air, but because you've got a build-up of carbon dioxide in your blood. So if you're breathing an atmosphere that is so cold that carbon dioxide is being robbed, then you have great difficulty building up carbon dioxide in your blood, which means you can literally stop breathing and just pass out because your brain just goes, well.
Yeah. Well, but they did, and Grandpa kind of dies because his suit's ripped. So they did have the suits, didn't they?
Yeah.
And then they were in control.
They had to have those. And so it was interesting that,
I'm
wondering though, the dark side, maybe it would have started maybe close enough, that close into the sun, it was still warm enough. But certainly once they got out a bit further, they would have zero atmosphere. It would all be just initially liquid.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping they had good drainage systems on their roads to avoid that liquid oxygen and things.
Yeah.
But it was nice that it was a nice touch that the atmosphere was being drawn off by Jupiter.
It was. I liked that too, yeah.
And of course, there was some atmosphere from Jupiter being drawn towards Earth.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, Earth's got its gravity.
Yeah,
yeah. And it's light that up. So that was quite good in many ways, I think. It was good that they had their artificial intelligence was not super intelligence. It was a fair extension of what we already have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was good. The whole thrusters and stopping the Earth from rotating, that would be devastating.
It would be.
But 3.5 billion people died in their processing, which they said was tsunamis and earthquakes when they stopped rotating the Earth.
Yeah.
Which I can't imagine the social upheaval just culling half the Earth's population would have. The benefit would be fewer people to riot.
Right. And you just, the people that are left after that, maybe that's why it was so grim in that, I suppose, maybe at the start.
Yeah, well, it was only...
had come out.
It was only 17 years after... Well, it was less than 17 years, because it was 17 years after they went up to the space station.
Yeah.
And they were still living on the surface and doing okay. It was shortly after that, I guess, that they went underground.
Mm.
Yeah, so that would explain a certain grimness there.
Yes.
But I did love this film in that grand scale of science fiction, where you could kind of imagine it maybe if they had a particularly good variety of fusion, for example, which allow them to very completely convert their rock into fusion energy, and then they were firing basically powerful plasma laser type things, then you can with a bit of hand waving and ignoring too many details, you can sort of go, no, you can do that. But it's the sort of science fiction that really inspires me. It's so grand, it's so everyone cooperating, and it's just the whole earth is literally moving. Yeah, it does. It's the sort of science fiction that really inspires you and makes you wonder, if you could do that, what a great way to travel the universe.
Just take the planet with us.
Well, otherwise we've got so many problems just getting to Mars, in terms of radiation and meteorites hitting us and God knows what else. And what do you do when you get there? But this way you got a whole planet, and they were 4 kilometers, I think, underground or something. Yeah, like they were considerably underground. Yeah, totally protected. They'd be getting more radiation from the Earth itself than from space. Yeah, and they wouldn't have to worry about particle impacts or anything. Yeah. Plus, they'd have the Earth's magnetic field still protecting. Yeah. So it's wonderful in that sense.
And I mean, it is realistic because there was a thing scientists the other day talking about a planet that there is a little bit of water on or something, but they're like, don't get your hopes up. And basically, at the end of hearing this scientist talk about that discovery, he was saying, but it just reminds you how precious Earth is. Like he was saying that there's still obviously so much to discover out there, but again, it puts that preciousness back onto, so that maybe does make a lot of sense that even in 500 years or something, if something came up, we might have to just shift Earth. Yeah. It's a logical thing, isn't it?
Well, there's been a lot of thoughts. If not the Earth, then certainly there's a few very large asteroids. Yeah. And the idea of grabbing one of those and you hollow out, because they're largely made of, say, iron. So a lot of resources there. So you get in there and you start hollowing out and you use what you're digging out to build your safety structure, station, and your engine, and then you keep hollowing it out using that as fuel. Yeah. So you get the fuel, but you get progressively lighter as you go, and it gets easier until you end up with like a hollowed out egg. Yeah. With maybe 0.5 kilometer or 1 kilometer thick walls to protect you, and you've attained some level of speed. Yep. And it's big enough, it's 20, 30, 40 kilometers in size, that you could actually sustain a population. Yeah. That could spend 1,000 years traveling to a nearby star. Yeah. You can imagine you could actually produce an engine capable of doing that. Yeah. Again, it's quite, we don't really have the technology now, but gives a few hundred years. Yeah. I mean, a few hundred years ago, we didn't have the technology to do anything we're doing now. Podcasts.
That's right. So I did think that the film was very cinematic. Like I was really seeing, like I said, like it felt like those big action films, but it was shot really nice. It was very cinematic. It was quite a beautiful kind of film language styled.
And the lovely colorations, and some of the shots almost looked like rendered paintings.
They did it.
And I got to think that was a stylistic choice. There was a particular one where Lu Chi is come across the fallen aeroplane, and there's that second transporter there, and they're standing there looking up at it. That looked, there was an artist, I don't know who it was. There's a book, this artist, and I'm sure you must have seen it when you're at school. It's just like a big hardcover book, and I think there might have been a bit of a story to it, but I never cared about that. It was just these paintings and these pictures of spaceships and these big mining vehicles and stuff.
I know the one.
And it had a very similar style, that shot, looking there. And I really got this. It almost looked like a painting or something. Yeah. Which, considering all of the other realism they had, meant that I'm sure they did that on purpose to. It really conjured for me the feeling of looking through when I was a kid in high school, looking through this book of science fiction scenes of planets and mining ships and space fights and things. Yeah.
They did go really grand, I think. Like, so it was very cinematic, like close-ups and mid-shots and the dialogue and in the trucks and stuff. But also then on top of that, there was a lot of grandness to it. Like, it was, as you were just saying, it's a grand sci-fi, and that's probably why they went that a little bit. Like, you got to come out. So we had a few of those big, beautiful tracking shots, and obviously a fair bit digital here. But, you know, of all the cranes digging the earth and the trucks and but it went on and on and on, you know, like. We went all the way out, and also I thought the space station itself was a bit like that. Like, that was grand again, and we saw a lot of the inside and the outside of that. But they didn't hold back from having those big wide shots, like zooming out from the ship.
And the shots of the Earth itself traveling through space with a little tail out behind it. There's something kind of a little bit. I don't know, whimsical about that almost. Seeing the Earth literally just like with a little trail.
Yeah. But it was cool. It was well done. Those special effects were good. I thought the soundscape was really good. It was really intense.
You know, they had all that orchestral stuff.
It was a very good soundscape considering. And then I've mentioned it a couple of times, and I'll just finish up on this, but like, you know, the story was super tight, and then the actual editing of those scenes was super tight. Like, everything, kind of those plot points, kicked it all into where it should have been, and it felt like a big action scene. I knew what was going to come next, but in a good way. Like, I was quite delighted by it. It was a nice roller coaster.
You knew that when they had that loss of hope where Hang Zhou was gone and they shot the core, and you go, oh, this is the very pits.
That's right.
And you know, we've seen enough films to go, there's going to be a ray of hope here.
Another plot point, isn't it?
But it was nice, that sort of thing where you saw like, but what is it?
Yeah, what will it be?
Yeah, and then there's, they found the transporter, which happens to have another lighter core, which makes sense. Because it was on its way and it crashed.
Yeah, it crashed, yep.
And you go, there's another lighter core.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be enough. Oh.
Right.
And then again, I was thinking, well, they must come up with some
sort of...
And I actually thought of the, igniting or using Jupiter in some way, some clever way, like I wasn't sure what that was going to be, but that sort of seemed to be what was going to have to happen.
Yeah. But it was, those plot points were just so well executed, I think, and I agree. Like, you knew what was going to happen. Like, they needed to bottom out, but then you sort of felt like someone's going to come up with an aha. Are they actually going to achieve that or not? Who's going to die? Like, that was a good question. Like, are they going to die doing that? We don't really know.
Yeah, like was Liu Key going to die rescuing his sister?
Yeah.
Well, that seemed a very real possibility.
Yeah, and the way that was shot was really cool, I think, because maybe in some other action films, they get to that point and, they get over the hurdle, whereas that was a real, like, this truck got destroyed and they're flung out into the atmosphere, plummeting to their death, like the 500-meter fall. And, the Melbourneite guy, he's grabbed onto a bit of rope, and so that could have been the crux. Like, they all hold onto a bit of rope and then they struggle up. But the sister's falling and he lets go, and I was like, maybe he's going to sacrifice himself here and somehow save her or something.
Yeah, I didn't know. I had no clue how that was going to work out.
And it was nice that it was shot that they just kind of fall into the debris and you don't see it at first, But then even like after that,
the thing, the collapse hit down here, the debris and a little puncture, and it exploded, and they flew out, and his helmet, Liu Key's helmet was shattered, and she's trying to put a hand over the whole shattered bits, and I was just going, okay, geez, come on, this is a
little break. Didn't, and
it's a rocky ending there, but
but it was good that they just threw everything at them. They threw the whole, like the screenwriters can talk a bit about that, like you throw the whole kitchen sink, the water, everything at them, like you don't hold back.
And then when they survive that, they slip on the soap.
That's right. So I thought it was really great, really good. And I mean, in terms of, we sort of said the Chinese culture, I think, is in this film, and it would be interesting to hear that perspective, I think. So if anyone's out there listening, Chinese listeners.
Yeah, of which we must have so many of that.
Yeah, we must have so many.
They're probably rolling their eyes laughing at us now.
That's right. That pronunciation.
That scene at the school at the start where the teacher says, spring is the beginning of hope. And then all the students, spring is the beginning of hope. As far as I know, that does not happen
No.
in any Australian school.
No, it doesn't.
Probably no Western school where, and they're all just chanting it. And it's clearly just something it was like just repeating this chant over and over, indoctrinating them with this idea.
Yep.
That struck me. And then when she asked, what is hope?
Yeah.
Could you imagine, like, she was meant to be like 15, I think.
Yeah.
Or there was 16-ish. Could you imagine, say, in year 10, being asked in geography,
Yeah.
Mark, what is hope? Hope you didn't ask me this.
No.
What?
Is this in the exam?
But then she comes up with something. You're like,
Yeah. Well done.
So clearly it's a different schooling system.
Yeah.
So, and that does set the tone a little bit early on for me, as it's going to be a little bit different.
It is going to be,
and it's nice.
And it is a bit different. So they've tried to, and they've successfully made this, I think, a big action sci-fi blockbuster. Ticks all the boxes. You said really grand sci-fi. If you accept the fact that we can shift Earth, and this is the dilemma, we have to shift it, but we have the technology to do it. Well, then you're in for a real ride in this film. Like, you're in for a roller coaster where you're going to be tense, you're going to laugh, you're going to kind of scream at them to move their butts and get
Quit talking.
You're going to be thinking, geez, what happens next? You're going to be going, who's going to survive this? Because it seems chaotic, So you're going to be cheering them on at the end. Like, it's that kind of blockbuster film. And I think they've done that very well. But intertwined is, it's a Chinese point of view. That's what it is. Like, there's a cultural point of view.
And I can certainly see.
It's good. Like, I had no issues with it. I think it was quite interesting. It's a point of difference. We see so many American films and it's a point of difference.
I can certainly see why it got such a good box office rating in China.
Yeah.
Because if you could well imagine, in China, they get hit with American Hollywood films as well.
Yeah.
And then they get, you imagine seeing this trailer for this, what is clearly a big budget, smashing great movie based on a book by a Chinese author that won international renown. And, it's like, it was released on Chinese New Year, and the film is set to start at Chinese New Year, where this whole, they're saying it's time for, families to get together. And he's retiring. He's going to go home on Chinese New Year. It's like this. It was a great big, a big boost there for the Chinese people.
Yeah.
Watching it, it'd be like, having some big Independence Day.
Yeah.
They did on 4th of July,
for the Americans.
And here in Australia, we're kind of going, 4th of July is like in the middle of winter. Like, it's miserable and awful. But so it's great.
Yeah, it was great. So let us know what you thought about it and what you thought about this podcast. Definitely check out The Wandering Earth. Next episode, I'm going to pick Oblivion. It's something I have wanted to watch. I've never seen
Tom Hanks.
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, nearly got you.
A Tom Hanks sci-fi would be interesting. I'm not sure. Has he done one?
Tom Hanks, if you have or you're going to, let us know.
Oh, there is that movie I've never seen, Atlas Cloud, I think.
Oh, yes.
Probably sci-fi.
Cloud Atlas.
Cloud Atlas. Yeah.
Yes, that is definitely sci-fi. It's very
I've never actually seen it.
I've seen it.
Tom Hanks is in that, isn't he? So
yeah, you guys watch it. It's pretty cool.
Or maybe we'll make it an episode. But so we'll check that out if you want to check it out before tuning back in to us.
And you get in touch with us at Space Brains Pod on Twitter. Space Brains Podcast is Facebook and Instagram.
Sure is. Thanks for listening and tune in next time.
See ya.
Bye-bye.